Hello, and welcome to Greywood Gardening. And it is planting time here at Greywood. Mrs. Greywood and I went to the local garden centers just before Memorial Day weekend, and we spent way too much money on all of these beautiful flowers. Now, it's made it very clear to me that I really need to expand the seed starting area in the basement. This year, I only had space for one tray of flower seedlings. And this is some New England aster, yarrow, goldenrod, and strawflower. And planting up this pack of 36 plants only cost me maybe $12 or $15, whereas if I bought this at the garden center, it would have definitely been over $100 and possibly over $200. So doing this is definitely the way to go in the future. Now, on this video, we are going to plant up the entire cottage garden, as well as the top terrace garden. And Mrs. Greywood has been clearing the area between the driveway and the veggie garden, which we're now calling the Mound, and we're going to be planting that up as a small garden as well. In addition, we have a few bushes and even a few trees that need to go in the ground. Now, the first thing you always do when planting flowers is to take the pots, lay them out where you want them to go, stand back, look at it from different angles, and keep moving them around until you're happy with the position of every plant. Only then should you dig holes and start putting things in the ground. All right, let's get started. Okay, everything is laid out the way that we want it. Now we just need to get planting. These are bloomerang lilacs. It's a cultivated variety that blooms in the spring like a traditional lilac, but then has a large bloom again in the fall. And in between, just so they don't get out of practice, they'll bloom a little bit here and there on and off. They're also shorter and more compact than traditional lilac. So we've got two of them that we're going to be planting here next to the driveway, and actually behind them we already have two traditional lilac planted that we planted as bare rootstock last fall. They're just beginning to leaf out now, and got them in cages so the deer don't eat them. But I think these guys are close enough up that they're going to be okay. Well, we didn't quite finish planting everything. In fact, we didn't even finish planting the cottage garden. Sometimes gardening with a toddler takes a little bit more time. But we'll be back tomorrow to finish things off, and in the meantime, we've got the sprinkler going to water everything in really good, so the stuff that we did get planted can get off to a good start. To be continued. Day 2 of planting. Just need to finish up the cottage garden, which shouldn't take long. Then we can get to work on the Mound Garden and the top Terrace Garden. Okay, all of the flowers got planted. We sure get a whole lot more done in the afternoon during nap time, but somehow it's not quite as much fun. So the top terrace garden clearly needs a lot more plants than we had for it. It's got a giant hole in it. I think the mound garden looks fantastic. It, however, could use a few more perennials up there. But the cottage garden looks wonderful. It's nicely filled up. It doesn't need anything else. Mrs. Greywood even decided to line the whole front edge of it with stones. By the way, every one of those stones I dug out of that garden last fall, as they were all throughout the entire garden on top of landscape fabric. Our philosophy with gardening, at least with flower gardens, is that they're really, we believe that they're things that should grow and evolve over time. It's not something that you make a plan, buy everything, put it in the ground, and you're done and it's perfect. So part of the way that we plant that way is we have a whole bunch of annuals mixed in with the perennials there, so that next year we have a lot of open space that we can start adding or taking away or expanding plantings based on what we see this year. So I'm super excited to see how this garden turns out and evolves over the course of the summer, and especially how it looks next year when the perennials are more established. So the one thing that is left to do is we have 3 trees. We have an apple tree and 2 Norway spruce that still need to go in the ground, but it's time to start dinner, so those are going to have to wait for another day. This handsome fellow is a Norway Spruce. It is one of the fastest growing evergreens there is. Once established, it can easily grow 2 to 3 feet a year, and it doesn't drop its lower branches like some pine trees do. So it really looks great all year round. It grows to be huge, easily 20 feet across, 60 plus feet tall. And we got 2 of them, and we're planting them on either side of the driveway. The goal is partially to have something green to look at in the winter, and also partially to help block the view of the street and our neighbor's house in the winter, although you can't see any of that in the spring or summer. And also planting them, by all accounts, is nothing very tricky. Just dig a hole, toss them in, fill it up. Hopefully the deer are going to leave this alone. They're not as excited about spruce as they would be about fruit trees. We have an apple tree to plant, and that's going to be a whole thing. All right, let's get this in the ground. All right, the 2 Norway spruce are in the ground, and I mulched them pretty thickly with wood chips. The wood chips will help suppress the growth of any kind of weeds or the wildflower seeds that I planted, and stop them from competing with the spruce for water and nutrients. It'll also serve to help retain moisture in the soil. So I will be keeping an eye on these guys, and I will be watering them very, very heavily, about once a week, depending on what's happening with the rainfall. Now, we have 1 more tree to plant, and this one is much more finicky and much more delicate. Come on. This is a Cortland apple tree on dwarfing rootstock. Cortland is Mrs. Greywood and my absolute favorite apple to eat. Now, when we were planning last winter everything we were going to do this year, we quickly realized we wouldn't be able to do all of it at once, and the orchard area is one of the areas that we dropped. But then Mrs. Greywood pointed out, well, why don't we plant just 1 tree? So here we are. Now, I've never actually owned a fruit tree before, nor have I planted one, so this is all new to me. From what I understand, I just need to dig a hole about twice the size of the root ball, do not put any kind of compost or fertilizer in the hole, plant the tree at the same level it's planted now, being extra careful not to cover up the graft point. We'll then want to cover the whole area thickly with mulch, but keep that mulch pulled away from the tree trunk itself. And then we'll need to stake the tree to keep it from bending over and breaking in the wind for at least the first several years. And finally, living where we do, we will need some sort of fencing solution to keep the deer away from it, because there's nothing the deer love to eat more than delicious, tender young fruit trees. All right, let's take it 1 step at a time. Step 1. Dig a hole. Step 2, plant the tree. That went a little easier than I thought. For really big root balls like this, I always like to water it in when I have it halfway filled to settle the dirt down, then water it again after it's all the way filled. We're actually on a hill here, so I went ahead and planted the tree at a slight angle so that the depth matches the natural grade of the hill. The tree itself is going to be a little bit crooked for a time, but it'll straighten out. Step 3, mulching. read an interesting tip in a book on fruit tree growing. They recommended pouring pea gravel right around the trunk of your tree. It has the benefit of stopping the mulch from eventually eroding up and pressing against the trunk, which can hold moisture against it. And he said that voles, when the voles try to burrow in to gnaw at the trunk of the tree, they get stopped by the pea gravel. So I figure we'll give it a shot. All right, step 4 is to stake the tree in. So I actually bought a little tree support kit. I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, time for step 5, I think, which is getting a fence up around this. Now, I don't really need to worry about the deer jumping over the fence because it's such a small area that's being fenced in, they wouldn't have any place to stand. The main concern is either deer just pushing the fence down, or the deer just leaning over the fence and grabbing hold of the apple tree. So I have a few of these 6-foot stakes. I think I have 5, which I'm hoping will be enough to circle it. And I managed to get a 5-foot high 14 gauge fence. So that should be strong enough that the deer won't just push through it, high enough that the deer can't reach over and eat the tree, at least if it's back far enough, but hopefully low enough that I can reach over it with a watering can or a bucket so I can actually water the tree. Let's get started. All right, and that should do it. Our long-term plan is to eventually build some sort of a deer fence around the entire area that's going to be this little orchard area. But in the meantime, this will keep the deer away from this tree, and it lets us get an apple tree planted this year. All right, well that's all I have for you on this video. Next time, I think we're actually going to do a garden tour and give an update on all the projects that we've been working on for the past few months. So until then, happy gardening.